Hello, we have a new product today and it's on the ExpressLRS side of things. It's from HappyModel and it's called the Fyujon, I think, and it's a combination of VTX plus an RX, and in fact you can split the board and use them completely separately, and there's lots of different mounting positions and stuff like that. Came from my friend Gaff over at UFPV. Thanks very much to him for supplying it. We should have a close look at this, see what's inside the bag, see how it works, and then think about what sort of quad we can pop it on and test it out. Well, as is tradition with HappyModel products, there's very little in the bag to give you much clue about what's going on. We get some stickers. We get a little UFL style connector for the VTX, and here is the board itself. This top area is the VTX, and you've got 16mm, 20mm, and I think that's 25.5 for mounting. You've got connectors there, it supports smart audio, and this part here is the ExpressLRS receiver. You see we've got a ceramic tower style antenna. Your mounting options are less there, depending how it goes on. You see you've got these little breakaway bits here, so you can take this out, you can take this part of the board out as well if it doesn't quite fit in place. And I'm not seeing any Wi-Fi chip on. This is compatible with the EP range of HappyModel receivers. I'm assuming this is going to be a case of flashing it via the flight controller in pass-through mode, but I'm not entirely sure. That would be very easy to find out, but it certainly looks that way. Anyway, what should we put this on? Well, obviously this is going to suit something small, and I thought, well, what have I got that's small that I didn't really get to fly very much because the range was so bad, but I actually do want to fly it. As far as most things go, you know, I've got a decent amount of toothpicks with decent receivers in them, and I've got indoor and outdoor whoops that are absolutely fine to fly. One thing I flew a long time ago and didn't have much success with was this thing here. It's called the Cinecam, and it's an eSheen product, and what you have is I think it's a 75mm whoop. It's got a Tarsier camera in, and as far as capturing HD footage on your sort of inbuilt FPV camera, the Tarsier was pretty good because it had two lenses. It had a dedicated FPV one and an HD recorded one, and that made it so you could actually see where you were going, although there's lots of problems with the fact that the HD one's up here and it's kind of got a completely different field of view than the one at the bottom, so what you're seeing on the bottom is not necessarily what you're capturing on the top. The reason I didn't have much success with this is it's got an SPI receiver in it, and it was dismal. In my tests I fell out the sky multiple times. It didn't even get 100 meters. So although this little guy just has a ceramic antenna, I'm thinking it's going to be way better than what's in this. And I just double checked, and it's got an F4 flight controller, so it can at least get up to a decent level of beta flight, and I can install at least 4.2, so I'm getting the right RSSI information from the CRSF thing. I don't know if there's a fit. I think it probably will. That the sort of triangular bit there looks okay. The ceramic antenna looks like it might hit this bit, but I can always, you know, just cut bits away and stuff. So that's the plan. It might not fit that, but we'll give it a go, and we'll see if we can get this installed and see what happens. One thing I tend to forget, and certainly did forget when I considered using this one, is in order to do anything on the flight controller, literally the entire thing has to be taken apart, and these are fiddly to work with. If you're wondering why there's a bit of blue tack there, it's indicating that's the front when I put it back together again. And this is a Crazy Bee F4 board, which are particularly difficult to work on because of how they're put together. This has got some weirdness in the fact that there's a separate video in that goes directly to the VTX, and then it goes back out into this, gets the OSD, and then goes back into this, which is really weird. Quite why you just can't take the video into video in and then pass the video out to the VTX, I don't know. But we'll try that with a new one. The new one might fit, I don't know, we'll have a look. But the biggest pain is to get ELRS on, the RX pins, RX1 and RX2, are there, right in the centre of that board, in that piddly little thing there. So I need to do some delicate soldering. I think my chances of success are about 50-50 with this sort of thing, not taking out one of these chips.
But yeah, we'll try our best to see what happens, essentially. Right, that was a bit of a struggle, mostly because, I mean, who put a solder pad there? It's so close to everything else. It's just ridiculous. I guess it wasn't maybe thought it was going to be used, and this crappy little thing was instead. Anyway, it's connected up. We've got RX and TX going up to there. We've got video, smart audio, 5-volt ground there. And what I've done, I've used the 5-volt ground, and if I just take this out, I've got a connection through the back to just try and save myself a little bit there. Well, apparently that one wasn't on very well. Let's put that back on and we'll try plugging it in. Okay, two things noticed from plugging the battery in. Firstly, getting a picture, but it's an awful picture. I wonder if it's in pit mode. Don't know yet. Secondly, we've got a very rapidly flashing LED there, which normally means it's like, oh, flash me with Wi-Fi. So I'll check out if that does have a Wi-Fi access point, and I can flash this, find out what's going on with the VTX.
And the answer is yes, it does have a Wi-Fi chip, and it's telling me it's firmware revision 1.0. So obviously we need to flash something later to it. Says it uses the HappyModel EP2400 RX, so okay, I'll do that. And the rest of this stuff is as before. So let's try build and a flash. For some reason, just lately, I seem to be getting a real problem getting uploads to work on Wi-Fi. And I think it's a host resolution problem. I notice it tries to resolve the host ELRS_RX.local, which seems to be not being dynamically added to my host lists. So, you know, the way around it is we just do a regular build, then we get our window into our update, and we drop the built thing in there. So this has just been built at the moment. That's got success, and here it pops up there nicely. So let's move that into download so I know where it lives. Choose file, choose that one, update it. Success rebooting, sounds good. So let's open up VitaFlight. So I've turned my radio on. Let's go into here and go down to receiver. I'll tell you what I haven't done. I haven't changed the configuration. That would help, wouldn't it? So yeah, we are now on UART 2 for serial RX. And if we go into configuration, we now need to change this from serial based and CRSF. Reboot that. Go into receiver tab. That's better. So yeah, that looks good. How are we in terms of our... This is running Betaflight 404. I'm going to update this and then I'm going to sort out the VTX stuff. So I'll do that bit first and then we'll come back. Okay, so you see that I've upgraded to Betaflight 4.2.11, and what I did, I went into the video transmitter and I added this, and I got this from the HappyModel site, which basically told me here. I did notice it's got this weird thing called RC, which I'd never seen before, and when I looked that up, I found it here on the OpenVTX, and this is basically race mode. The idea is when you put it on RC, it stays in pit, and when you arm it, it only goes to 25. So at least I had some ideas about what that did and why, you know, it was initially so bad. So I could try that again. So yeah, we've updated the board. That looks alright. So let's see if this VTX works better now. Okay, it's still buzzing a bit. Brilliantly there with this thing, but it seems to be in the right power mode now at least. So I'm going to put this back together, calibrate the accelerometer, do all the settings, and then see how it's doing at that point. Bit fuzzy, but let's see how it looks. Okay, here's the quad reassembled. You see that board just about fits in there, and I've checked it, and you see the little ceramic antenna has just got clearance there. It didn't think it was going to have, and yeah, this is very fiddly to put back together.
but it seems to work okay if I plug this guy in. So here we are all powered up, and there's still a little bit of buzzing from this guy. That pitch is very over bright. See if I can film myself there. Nope. This is just the filming. Oh yeah, if we film most of that in, it's okay. So we've got a little bit of banding there, which is not perfect, but I certainly think it's good enough to try outside, because we've got a lot of 5.8 noise within the house. So I think let's hook this up and try it. We've got 3S batteries we'll be using on this guy. It's pretty heavy, and so it needs some power to get going. But yeah, let's go fly it now and see how we do, both in terms of the receiver and of course the VTX. Okay, and we're ready to test this little guy out. It's a bit gusty in the field. It was supposed to be about 10 miles an hour. It feels a little bit higher. This is quite weighty, so hopefully not too bad in the wind, and it'd be interesting to see what sort of range we get out of that little ceramic tower antenna, although looking around there's not too far to go, especially for something this small, but let's see if we have any worries about going anywhere with it. Anyway, let's fly it. So we're up, off and flying, and yeah, that was on a bit of a tilt, wasn't it? That's what happens when you have a little 85mm quad and the balance lead sticks out a bit, sort of the whole thing goes over. So I'm going into wind here and at the null point of the antenna, and I thought it would cut through the air okay, but it's ducted practically, of course, so that means it does act like a bit of a sail, and it's very light, so we're really struggling against the wind here. But I did see a couple of interesting things from here that I wanted to point out, because a lot of you guys have been talking about the dBm as the RSSI value being the thing to look at, and I've gone against it. But if we look at there, you could see how low the link quality went, but the dBm value was still perfectly fine. This should fail safe, I think, at about minus 120, and although the link quality went very bad, the actual dBm value there was very good. The other thing I noticed, and we will come back to look at this in more detail, is we seem to be flying with the power of 400 milliwatts, which I hadn't intended, and I'm thinking, oh, how did that get set? I should go do something about this. So yeah, on this flight I kind of flew back and forth a bit, just around, but I thought I'd come back and I put it in 25 milliwatts because we want to see what it's like at that point of view. From the picture point of view, you will notice we've got some diagonal lines going on, nothing too bad, and I think it comes from running the Tarsier, which is a bit of a noisy component, especially when you're talking about a very small little VTX like this, but it's acceptable quality. I'm not going to go into detail on the HD footage because I don't think it's particularly relevant for what we're looking at here, but let's land this and change over, because this is where it went a little bit wrong. So here's what I think happened. I landed the quad and I used the VTX administrator function in the ExpressLRS Lua script to change it to what I thought was 25 milliwatts, and then I unplugged that battery and plugged a new one in. But when I powered back up, I noticed that it still had 400 milliwatts. I thought, oh, that's weird, perhaps that's not working. So I thought, never mind, I'll change it via the OSD. We'll try and figure out what's happening with that one later. So as you know, per normal pre-ExpressLRS, I went into the VTX and I said change the power to 25 milliwatts and go ahead and fly it. So we take off here, we're at 25 milliwatts as expected, and I'm just getting up in the air and suddenly everything is lost. And what's interesting about that, and I didn't notice at the time because I was off trying to find it, is you'll notice it's gone to RCE in pit mode at this point. But I didn't see that at the time, so I thought, that's weird. What happened? I should try it again and see what happens this time. So I did. And here we are attempting to fly once again at 25 milliwatts. Everything seems to be okay. Yep, I'm thinking it looks alright this time. I wonder what that was. That's all a bit weird, isn't it? So, feeling that things were okay and not really understanding what the glitch was, I decided to go off and go towards the end of the field, and then it happened again. And I thought, I know, I'll put it in 400 because I know that was working because that's the first flight I did with it. And I think I may have tried setting this again through the ExpressLRS Lua, and then that didn't seem to do anything, so I set it in the OSD and
it seemed okay. We seemed to be flying at 400 milliwatts. But what I didn't notice until I came back, well, I think I noticed eventually, but what happens is this suddenly changes to 25 milliwatts, which is weird. And I'm like, what's happened there? But at the same time, it hadn't just fallen out of the sky, so I thought, that's fine. I'll just carry on and see what happens. So what can we say about this? Well, the interesting thing about it is being in 400 milliwatts or being in 25 milliwatts, I didn't really see much of a difference in terms of the sort of range I was getting. I mean, it's not fantastic in terms of the picture. We get a little bit of noise. It's only got one of those little nasty dipoles which tends to hang sort of underneath the ducts, so it's not in a great position, and this was kind of bent round from falling out of the sky. I think the props took it a couple of times. But that said, in 25 milliwatts it seems to be doing okay, as does what it looked like in 400 milliwatts, to be honest. As far as the ExpressLRS receiver, interesting stuff again here, watching the difference between link quality and the DBM RSSI. I was flying through here and I saw the link quality suddenly drop to nothing. In fact, it came up with an RX loss. But I just carried on flying because my DBM value was absolutely fine and I didn't have any loss of control at all, which I think is very interesting. And I now take the point about people saying, you know, that link quality is not the be or end all. It's very interesting to have both values there. So yeah, I mean, my only issue is what was happening with these values. Why was I suddenly getting a loss of power? It went down from 400 to 25 milliwatts, and then we had 25 milliwatts dropping to RCE. Why was that happening? How was that happening? That's what I tried to find out. And what I did, I went back and examined both those bits on failure again. And if you hold just before we lose everything, you see it goes back to RCE. In both instances, it goes from 25 to RCE, and then we just get snow and we drop out the sky. So I think I figured out the issue, although there's a couple of bits I can't really explain. But to start with, if we have a look at the VTX administrator part of the Lua script for ExpressLRS, we get this, and we set our power levels based on numbers 1 to 9, and these correspond to our VTX table. So if you can see, this is my Quilla, so power level number 1 would be 25 milliwatts, power level 2 is 200 milliwatts, etc, etc. Now on the Fyujon, if I'm saying that right, it's a bit weird because there's 5 power levels. The first is 0, the second is RC, which is race, and then number 3 is 25 milliwatts. I had discussions in the ExpressLRS and OpenVTX Discord groups, and one thing I learnt from that is you should never get any smart audio being sent as soon as the quad is armed. So the fact it was changing channels after the event is a bit weird. But what I also found is that the VTX administrator is what you could call the boss of the situation. So this should always overrule what's going on. So as soon as you turn on your quad, the radio should set your VTX to what you want. Now for some reason in my situation this seemed to be delayed. So I think what I was doing is I was setting my power levels based on what I'm used to. So power level 1 is 25, and then I thought, oh, power level 1 is probably RC, so I should set it to power level 2, but you know, it's always 1 or 2 behind. So I think that was the problem. But what was weird about this is this delay, and I can't find a particular way of explaining that, whether it's a bug somewhere in OpenVTX or ExpressLRS, or it's just a problem with the flight controller or an issue with Betaflight. But for some reason that change of power settings seemed to be getting delayed and then suddenly coming in once I'd taken off. Because ExpressLRS is on a per module basis and you might have different settings on your models, what you could do is remove that Lua script from the equation. To do that, you could either stop the power being changed by setting the power value to a dash, or you could stop it sending any information at all just by setting the band to off. And then you could go ahead and do it in the OSD. But the lesson from this seems to be one or the other, but not both. Else there'll be a fight, and in this case ExpressLRS won, although for some reason it delayed, and that really screwed me up.
But now I was happy I'd understood what the problem was, I decided to go out again, and this time I only used a VTX administrator. And what I'd do, if it didn't instantly change, and sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't, I'd sometimes just reboot the quad, and when it came back up it would be at the right power level, so that seemed okay. So what I'm doing here, I'm just in these bits of woods that I fly sometimes, and it's a little bit more of a tricky situation for a VTX, but I thought I'd fly along this tree line and then I'd do this other track. If I sort of zoom round behind myself and go forwards, there's kind of a path set here between the two trees, and then we can watch the kind of picture we get at 25 milliwatts, and we can see what the LQ and the dBm RSSI value looks like from ExpressLRS. I was pretty happy with the ExpressLRS receiver. No problems in going a couple of 100 meters, which is what you'd expect from this sort of receiver. If you really wanted to go further, then you'd use a bit of receiver. But for people that want to really have a sort of a compact sort of racing rig, even on a 5-inch, you could probably use a ceramic tower type antenna and get away with it okay. But for most people, it's going to be the sort of the toothpick or the whoop quad like this. Anyway, that's it on 25. I did go to 100, but I didn't notice much of a difference. So I'm going to go straight to 400 now to see if you can see a difference. And this is the story at 400 milliwatts. Doing it in a slightly different order. I'd already taken off, and then I bumped into some dog walkers, so I landed the quad until essentially they got out of the way. But at 400 milliwatts and at 100 milliwatts beforehand, honestly, I really don't notice a difference. So either 25 is pretty good, or 400 and 100 is pretty shabby in comparison, because to me they all feel exactly the same. In which case you might as well just use it at 25. I don't know if I don't think I'm doing anything wrong in terms of setting the power, but yeah, I can't tell a blind bit of difference. Now it could be the fact that because we're in woods and these little antennas being a crappy little dipole which is stuck down at a really stupid angle on this, that's what's making it struggle, and we might see more of a difference in a big open field. But honestly, when I flew it in the big open field from the last flights, I didn't see much of a difference either. So it works pretty well for what it is. It just didn't wow me when I upped the power. It looked exactly the same as the previous powers. Just a quick word on the HD footage, because some interesting facts here. Last time I used the Tasier, I was complaining that my FPV footage looked completely different to what was in the HD camera, because the two lenses are set slightly apart. And as it turned out, when you record in widescreen, it just essentially cuts the bottom and the top off and crops a full free image out. So this time what I did, I set it to film in 1440p, so which is a 4:3, and then in my editor I used something called Andy's Elastic Aspect, which is a free plugin that I'm using Final Cut Pro, but it also works in Motion or Premiere Pro or After Effects if you've got one of those editors. And this kind of tries to do an intelligent stretch where it keeps the center from not distorting, and then you can apply different effects to make it stretch out sort of variably, a bit like how GoPro does in a camera. That's the plan anyway. I think it looks okay. Maybe there's some bits more of tweaking to do, but it's not too bad. Obviously, because this was the last LiPo of the day, this ended up going into a tree and crashing and breaking a prop, but that's kind of the fun of it all.
Well, there you go. That's the end of my little adventures with the Fyujon board, if I'm saying that right. I like things like this, not so much because, oh my god, I'm wowed by the product or anything, but because I find out more. I found out, for example, that the Lua script in terms of the VTX admin for ExpressLRS is in charge. So you use that, or you turn it off and use your OSD. You don't try and use both, else you'll screw things up. Quite why we had that delay, we still don't know. So in terms of the board, really useful if you've got a small amount of space like this and you want to put both an ExpressLRS receiver and a VTX in place. VTX wise, it didn't blow me away, and that's because, well, firstly there's some confusion there. If you look at HappyModel's site, it calls it a 300 milliwatt VTX, but they also published the VTX table you should use, and that says it goes to 400 milliwatts. I've put it down as 300 milliwatts on my title page. I think that's correct. Who knows though? But the point is, I really didn't see much of a difference between 25 and 400. And it could be due to this and its position as we fly along. It's pretty much null facing all the way, and you might get much better with a different antenna. But the fact I really didn't see a difference in the power was the weird thing. But in terms of the ExpressLRS receiver, that worked pretty well. We got a good couple of 100 meters of range there, and it was very interesting to see how differences were coming out between the LQ and the DBM RSSI. I think I like having both on the screen there. They can reassure me or scare me in equal measures. But yeah, so if you're looking for something like this, this is the Fyujon, maybe. I don't know how to say the word. If someone knows, they can tell me. And it was very kindly supplied by my friend Gav, who has the FPV shop Your FPV. Thanks very much to him. He keeps sending me interesting things. He sent the backpack as well, and that had me doing some head scratching just to figure things out. So yeah, quite interesting, and a nice little product. And I like the fact that ExpressLRS is just everywhere, because it's so much better than the other protocols right now. Anyway, I hope that review's been helpful, although it's less a review, more about watch me try and troubleshoot my own problems that I make for myself, but that's kind of just the way I fly. Anyway, I will catch you in the next video. Bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.